All right, everyone. Hello and welcome to our Neptune Retrograde in Pisces webinar. As you can see on your screen, Neptune is going to be retrograde from June 9th to November 15th, 16th, depending on where you are on planet Earth when it goes stationary direct. And I love the planet Neptune. I love the pictures from Voyager when it flew by. As you see on your screen, it's known as the blue planet. Um, Perhaps I like it because I have my Sun, Mercury, Neptune from 1 to 2 degrees Scorpio. So early on in my life, it was a lot of Neptunian confusion, and it put me on a search to understand and know the larger happenings in the universe in a very early age. And so over time, Neptune's become my friend, even if it's not always the easiest friendship. Before we get started, of course, as you know, we have 4 different ways in which you can study with us here at Evolutionary Astrology Network. You can listen to our free audio podcasts. You can subscribe to our Astro Library. You can purchase our multimedia course segments, and you can pursue homework and certification with us. A little more details on our Astro Library. We've taken the last dozen years of materials from conferences and workshops and various teachings that I, myself, and others have done, and we've organized them into 3 different sections of our Astro Library, and you can subscribe monthly, 6 months a year, or recurring monthly, which you can cancel at any time. Our multimedia course segments, there are 3 of them here. All of the philosophy archetypes and the basics of chart interpretation, segment 1. Segment 2, of course, is relationships from familial and intimacy. And segment 3 is health and wellness astrology. And you can see everything that comes with those. DVDs, transcript, audio files, access to webinar classes for segments 1 and 2. And as you can see right here, at the beginning of this year, we started taking our monthly classes with segments 1 and 2 and moved them over into the webinar format. If you are not one of our segments in either 1 or 2, you are welcome to contact us and ask for a free sample class that you can download so you can see how the material is shaping up. As I move into my 6th month of teaching this way, I absolutely love it. You're a little noisy, Media Monk. Are you wanting to say something?
I did. I kind of wanted to also announce with this group that we have completed putting all those webinar classes into the new segment 1 and segment 2 areas for students. So there's a lot of material now besides the 250 hours of audio teleclasses that are archived in segment 1. You also have all the segment 1 DVD streaming video, just like on the DVDs. That content is available for you to stream right from any device anywhere from that registered students area, as well as the new segment 2 webinars, or is in the segment 2 area, of course, and all the segment 2 DVD content is able to be streamed directly from our website now as a registered student at EAN. So we invite everybody to come on in if you're upgrade to segment 2, if you're a segment 1 student, and we're enrolling new segment 1 students this spring.
And
So
don't you have this special $50 off free shipping running 1 more week?
we do indeed. So you just use that coupon code upon checkout, segment SEGMENT. There's two different places to apply that coupon code when you're checking out. You get $50 off, you get free shipping, plus you'll get this free sample download. A download of one of our most recent webinars immediately will come to you on your account pages. So tremendous amount of value now for those that want to join as a new student, new registered students, or an upgrade to segment 2 or segment 3.
All right, thank you, Media Monk. Media Monk, I'm calling you Media Monk today. Lavoy. All right, everybody, here's our tonight's material. And so again, Neptune retrograde in Pisces. We're going to start out with the synodic cycle. Traditionally, a synodic cycle was always a planetary relationship to the sun, but you're finding it to become more and more common for a synodic cycle to be any two planets' relationship together from conjunction to conjunction. So what I have done here for you is, in addition to the two conjunctions that the sun makes to Neptune and its opposition, which is the highlight of its retrograde cycle, I've also included Neptune's shadow. And this gets very interesting when we start working with Neptune and Pluto, because their cycles are so long. As any of you know, if you've been following your chart over time, sometimes their retrograde cycles will bring you 5 planetary aspects to your natal chart instead of the traditional 3 aspects. And so what we find is that both Neptune and Pluto will cover a few degrees of the zodiac more than one time. And I'll give you an example here. But first of all, for the sake of anybody who may be listening as an audio file, Neptune turns, well, first of all, it entered its shadow February 17th, 4:48 Pisces. That's where it's going to go stationary direct. It goes retrograde June 9th, 2014 at 7:36 Pisces. And of course, the highlight, the aha moments of its retrograde cycle is when the Neptune approaches the Sun. This will occur August 29th, 2014. The Sun will be at 6 Virgo, 11 minutes. Neptune retrograde at 6 Pisces, 11 minutes. And then Neptune goes direct I put November 16th up here. It's the 15th on the very west coast of the United States, and the 16th as you go east. Neptune goes direct at 4 degrees Pisces, 48 minutes. And then Neptune leaves its shadow March 6th of 2015 when it returns to that degree of 7 Pisces, 36 minutes. However, here's what I found interesting in my research. Here are these stationary points of Neptune. Stationary retrograde, 7:36 Pisces. Stationary direct, 4:48 Pisces. But as you're looking at your screen, look at this. Neptune crosses over that point where it turns retrograde and direct 4 times. So from 2013 to 2016, you can see that Neptune, again, goes across those points 4 different times. So if you have planets around that 2 degrees up to 8, 9 degrees, of course, Pisces, or the mutable sign, Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces, or the water sign, Cancer, Scorpio, you're going to have Neptune making aspects directly or coming within orb of influence as an aspect 4 times. So again, anybody who has planetary points in the early degrees of the sign, maybe you can go all 12 signs really with your minor aspects, you can see the impact that Neptune has. I'm not going to give all these dates, but suffice it to say that in 2013-14, Neptune goes over 4:48 Pisces 4 times. And from 2014-15 to the beginning of 16, Neptune goes over 7:36 Pisces 4 times as well. That's a lot of impact. That's a lot of chances to get it right, huh? Now, here's how it looks visually when we have a planetary retrograde. I'm going to use my arrow here, and so when we have the outer planets during their retrogrades, the Earth is always in between the planet and the Sun, and when it's retrograde, Earth is as close as possible to the planets. And you can follow these arrows and just see how visually in the sky it looks like the planet stops, goes backwards before it stops, and goes direct again. Whenever any of the outer planets, Mars through Pluto, make a conjunction to the Sun, they're always over here to the extreme left of your screen, and they are as far away as possible from planet Earth. So this visualization here is true for any of the planets in their retrogrades, Mars through Pluto. By the way, as I've been teaching, 3 retrograde cycle classes here in these first few weeks of June, I had a flash that I think this fall, when there's not so many retrogrades and retrograde classes, I'm planning this fall to do some generic astrology, evolutionary astrology classes. I think I'm going to teach a class on retrograde basics, or the astronomy of retrogrades as viewed from planet Earth. So if that sounds like a good idea for some of you right brain people, give me some feedback on the message board with Leroy and let me know if you'd like to have a class on retrograde basics. And we'll cover both the inner planets, Mercury, Venus, and the outer planets, and do some of that visual to really help you get a grasping of this. Now, some of Neptune's astronomy is it takes about 165 years to go around the Sun, as well as its revolution around the zodiac. If we averaged out the daily mean motion of Neptune, it would be 24 minutes. In other words, it travels so slowly. We're not, or seconds, 24 seconds, excuse me, about half a minute. And there are 60 minutes in a degree. So you can see Neptune is far enough away from the solar system that from planet Earth it looks like it barely moves in the sky. Neptune is retrograde 5 months annually, or 43% of a calendar year. Its retrograde period is 157 days, and its stationary period is 7 days. That means when Neptune gets ready to go stationary retrograde, it appears to stand still in the sky for an entire week. Neptune going retrograde June 9th. This class is being recorded on June 4th. Neptune is standing still. It is stationary, turning retrograde as we speak. That same thing is true when Neptune slows down to go direct again. It is stationary direct, appearing to stand still in the heavens 7 days, an entire week. Neptune was discovered the evening of September 23rd, 24th, 1846 at the Berlin Observatory over in Germany. There were 2 gentlemen who were given credit for it. A little bit of controversy and confusion over who discovered Neptune first. Fits right in with Neptune's interpretations as an archetype. Now, of course, in 2006, Pluto was demoted to a dwarf planet, so Neptune is now the official planet furthest from the Sun in our solar system at this point. It is the 4th largest planet. It is the 3rd largest by mass, which and it's one of the 4 gas giants. The gas giants are, okay, let me get this right: Neptune, Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter. Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune. They are the known as the gas giant planets. Neptune has 14 moons that have been discovered so far. However, they know there are more out there. They can tell there's more through reverberations, but they haven't quite discovered them yet. And of course, as we know, with Pluto's very elliptical orbit, that means most of the planets move pretty smoothly in the orb of the ecliptic, the Sun's apparent path. Most of them move within a 16-degree band on the ecliptic. Pluto is off then it goes off 23 degrees, and it makes Pluto appear to go inside Neptune's orbit. And the last time that happened, as you can see, 1979 through 1999. So while Neptune traveled from about 20 degrees Sag up to 2-3 degrees Aquarius, it appeared to be outside of Pluto's orbit. That in itself is a subject for interpretation, which we do not have the time to go into tonight. And it does this, Neptune and Pluto together have a 500-year cycle. I think I'm not going to remember how many times it does it. It's either 2 or 3 times. You can refer to the Pluto retrograde class. I think I have the information there. Now, here's the chart. I thought I'd just pop these in. This is when Neptune was first discovered. Of course, we don't have the time, so I just chose 3 a.m. in the morning. It would be pretty dark yet. And Neptune was discovered retrograde about 26 degrees Aquarius. I use 0-degree houses when I don't have a correct time. Now Neptune finally made its first 165-degree orbit around the zodiac. Excuse me just for a moment. I have a kitty. I didn't close my door. I'm going to put the earbuds down just to move the kitty out of the room. Be right back. Missy LB, Missy's going to have to go. You have to wait for Mommy to get done. Hi everyone, thank you very much for that.
Kim, I just wanted to acknowledge everybody's concerns about the audio quality. We have, probably 1 out of 5 that are having issues with a little echoing in the background. And it seems to go in and out as you either sit up, put your chin up, or expose yourself to that earbud mic more efficiently. And I have kind of decided that we're going to get you on a USB headset for future webinars, just because we do have many of the people that have responded to that, are on open mics on their computer, their laptops. Laptop speakers are not the most efficient way to participate in a webinar. You'd want to get mic'd or get a headset on, most people, because eventually we're going to be fluidly interacting on these webinars, audio and video, with participants and panelists and co-speakers, etc. So we'll move in that direction. Just want to thank everybody for their feedback.
Thank you for that. It's very hard for me to sit completely still. So, so in other words, I'm coming across almost too loud and it distorts.
The most general
Roy,
term.
you muted yourself back again.
The most general adjective would be muffled from time to time. Okay.
All right. Okay, so Leroy has wanted to get me on a USB headset, and I like my little iPhone earbuds because they're light. But I'll tell you what, by Neptune retrograde in Chiron, I will upgrade that headset. And in the meantime, I'll do my best to be as still as possible. And so I've been sitting that way since Leroy mentioned this, so you can let me know if my voice is improving since then. I'm not going to go into chart interpretation here. I thought it was kind of interesting that Pluto is conjunct the South Node at this time and in a nice waning sextile to Neptune. But we have to save that for another day. But for those of you who do want to study this, I did want to give you that information. And here's another very interesting tidbit about Neptune's discovery. Galileo, remember, he was the first telescope, or one of the first people to really become known for working with a telescope in the early 1600s. And as a matter of fact, he actually discovered Neptune December 28th of 1612, and he didn't really know what he was looking at. And in 1615 was when they had the Roman Inquisition, in which he was given the choice to denounce his belief in a heliocentric system, all the planets around the sun, and in return for that he was allowed to keep his life, but he was put under house arrest the rest of his life. That's when he did some of his greatest writings. But isn't it interesting that he discovered Neptune at 26.5 degrees Virgo, right in the middle of the Inquisition time period? And look at those planets in Virgo Pisces. I just thought that was an interesting tidbit for everybody. Now, I'm not an expert on Roman mythology, but I did put a couple of points in here, including a picture of Neptune, known as the Roman god of the sea. In Greek, Neptune was called Poseidon as one of the Greek gods. Probably the most famous Neptunian festival was Neptunalia, and it's always July 23rd, and there are some of those in the pagan world who still worship this. And basically what they think is that it was a summer festival to bring in the god of water in the middle of the summer drought and heat. Now Neptune was a brother to Pluto and Jupiter. Neptune presided over the heavens, Jupiter over our earthly world, and Pluto, of course, in the underworld. And Neptune married Salacia, whoever. She was the goddess of the salt water. And they had 3 children, and the first one was Triton, and Triton was the first moon discovered after Neptune was discovered, and they discovered that moon on Neptune within 2 weeks after discovering Neptune in 1846. And so Neptune has long been known as God, or if you want to, goddess of the sea, and all of the waters respectively. And look at how Neptune rules Pisces as an archetype and rules everything with water and the emotions. You can just see how that's come forward through time and of course modernized with our humanistic perspectives today. Now the Neptune archetype. Here is one of the most basic representations. Neptune Pisces in the 12th house is the archetype in consciousness and subconsciousness and the unconsciousness that represents our personal and collective search for universal source, whatever your language or term is, for God, Goddess. The Neptune in our chart, by sign and house and aspects, is going to describe how we are all on our own journey to know source energy. When Neptune's retrograde, something is either missing in our relationship to source, or something is no longer working on our path to relate to source energy. So when Neptune goes stationary retrograde, as it is right now, one of the most basic things coming into consciousness is a loss of meaning on the largest picture possible, and perhaps depression that is turning us inward on some of the deepest levels possible to surrender to source. In other words, what is it in the manifestation of our material world that is no longer working, that is dissatisfying us, that has us going, what else? There must be more to life than this. Leroy and I recently have had 4 people, acquaintances, friends, that have transitioned from their physical bodies back to spirit world within the last 2 weeks. I don't know for Leroy, but for me personally, it's really had me going, wow. It is so fragile here on this earth plane. In one moment, somebody can be gone. One of the acquaintances was a couple that we've known for a few years, and we met in the same restaurant when my family was in town for our son's high school graduation. And I had my sister and my 4-year-old niece, and the wife of this couple is my grandmother. She's known as Grandma Gail, and she runs a daycare out of her home. So I had to, of course, introduce her to my 4-year-old niece, and Saw her husband, didn't have as much conversation, just touched him on the shoulder as I was walking by from the restroom and said, "Hi Mike, how you doing?" "Hey Kim, just great." And an hour later he was gone in a car crash. So that's just that Neptunian world when it takes that Saturn reality and just dissolves it. And this is the epitome of when Neptune goes stationary retrograde. And it's when these outer planets, especially Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, turn stationary retrograde or direct, that we really bring the unconscious to the unconsciousness. It's like the veils are thin and you can actually reach it, feel it, taste it, notice it in our life. So you want to be paying attention to where in your chart Neptune is turning retrograde at 7.5 degrees Pisces for you. Now, a few more details on the archetype of Neptune. And when Neptune's in Pisces, it's the same archetype. It's in its own sign. It's finishing up a 165-year cycle of evolving our spirituality. So Neptune is the last of the 12 archetypes in astrology. It includes all 11 archetypes or all 11 signs or houses that came before it. That's how we know it as the totality of consciousness in all its forms. Neptune, most common word, is transcendence, meaning there must be more to life than just a physical universe or just a physical existence. The purpose of Neptune Pisces in the 12th house is to remove any barriers to universal source, any delusions of separation to source energy. When we come here onto this physical plane, Jeffrey Wolf Green's analogy was that we are the wave, and as that wave crests upon the sea, or as we come here physically, we think that this is it. But then the wave returns back to the sea. The wave returns back to universal source. And Neptune's job is to help us back to God Goddess. So Neptune is that collective conscious unconsciousness, both of the past, present, and future. Now, as the collective conscious unconsciousness, we have it on a universal level, meaning us as a human species, regardless of race, country, religion. But we then also will have these sub-levels of a collective conscious unconsciousness that we'll call racial and national. It's different being white versus black. It's different being in the United States versus being from Germany or Australia. And then included in this also on a universal level is Neptune as part of the collective conscious unconsciousness includes the non-human forms of consciousness, mineral, vegetative, and animal forms of consciousness. And there are those who feel that humans are nothing greater than animal consciousness as well. We've become quite good at being self-aware, but we're still mammals. So one more time, Neptune is that totality of consciousness in all its many manifested forms via Saturn. Neptune operates through cycles of confusion and clarity. Now when we end up in a confusion side of the cycle, we have alienation, we have disassociation, disillusionment. You've heard all these Neptunian words. There's no meaning in life. We have ultimate depression. What that is doing is it's really turning us inward on some of the deepest levels possible that have us recognize what is no longer working in our life. And Neptune will remove it. It'll just dissolve it. I had this desire. I manifested it. Why does it not make me feel happy anymore? Or why is it being taken away from me when I'm not ready to let it go? One of the reasons for that is to teach us to align our personal will with divine will, to recognize that whatever we've manifested in the world, it is no substitute for source. And once we have went through that part of the cycle, I'll talk about that famous void that comes with this in the next slide. But we will then somehow, some way, magically move over into what we call the clarity side of this cycle. And this is where all of a sudden life has meaning again. We're renewed. We're inspired. We have our faith back. We feel connected to the universe. We feel connected to our desires or whatever we've manifested. And that clarity cycle is really having us renew our relationship with the divine, with universal source, even when we're doing it through our human relationships or the new job or the new windows in the kitchen or whatever it is that we are bringing back along into our life. Or sometimes it's something new that comes into our life, and sometimes it's not necessarily something new. It's our relationship to it. It's our perspective to it. We recognize the divine in it if it is something that's meant to stay in our life for a while. Now, these cycles of confusion and clarity are very unpredictable. They are not conscious. They're not something that we can go, okay, today I'm going to be happy. Leroy? Question?
Well, the question that came up from the board would relates to that confusion cycle that you're talking about, Kim. Does that confusion then tell us we're not on the right path for our soul?
Correct. That's it. Something's no longer working. We've either exhausted the desire, the separating desire, or we're clinging to that separating desire and we're not ready to let it go. And according to divine will, it's no longer serving us. So if we're not willing to say goodbye and release it and let it go, source energy will remove it. The famous Neptune dissolving, whatever.
Disillusionment, yeah, and
Yes.
if we don't get it, then it might dissolve it, right? So essentially, then that infers that there is something else we are here to do, or to be, or to discover about ourselves.
Yes, and it is the process of recognizing the exhaustion of the separating desires. And what we have a tendency to do is replace it with another separating desire. And the reason that we will have the void is so that we are going, what's it all mean? What's the deeper purpose? The reason for those confusion cycles is to turn us inward to universal source. One of Jeffrey Green's analogies of Neptune, Pisces in the 12th house, is imagine you're in a tiny little rowboat all by yourself out in the middle of an ocean, and it is foggy. No shore in sight, so foggy you can't see anything. You have no choice but to go inward and move forward on an instinctive gut level, on your faith and trust in relationship to source. So it's teaching us to quiet down those cycles of confusion that then leave us in a void. It's teaching us to quiet down and actually hear God, Goddess speaking to us clairvoyantly, clairaudiently, clairsentiently.
Can you
So when
relate?
Neptune does, go ahead.
Another question came through from Michael. Can you relate this? Is this like the dark night of the soul, quote unquote?
Yes, yes, exactly. hmm hmm And so, as you can see from this screen, when Neptune dissolves something or brings in that confusion or void, again, it's the past. It's something that needs to be let go of. And we're left in that void for a time period, Saturn space-time, so that it's not so easy to just substitute another separating desire. Or, if it is replaced with another separating desire, it's one that is aligning our will with divine will. How many of us on an egoic level think we want something and we get something else? When we get something else, that is source energy running the show, so to speak. We can think on an individual egoic level or an individual soul level that we are in charge. But how many times with Neptune, Pisces, 12th house in our chart do we have to learn that the big kahuna is in charge and it's not us? So that void then also serves to shift our consciousness from our ego to our soul. Now, for all those in the consensus state of consciousness, 7 out of 10 souls, that center of gravity is the ego. And as we expand in consciousness, individuating and then spiritualizing, that process is shifting from ego to soul as a center of gravity. That's Neptune's work. And we then also are shifting consciousness from an individual soul level to a universal soul level. And what's one of the worst things that can happen to us? The fear of loss and a fear of losing control could be included in this as well. And that fear in general, fear of loss, fear of losing control, that is the source of the separating desires, because our ego is always trying to fill in that void. It's too easy to do that. So there's a purpose to Neptunian confusion. There is a purpose to Neptunian existential voids. Is this stuff making sense for everybody? More questions? Please feel free to ask your questions, and Leroy, interrupt me. We do have a lot of material to go through. Oh, woo! 42 minutes already. All right. Neptune rules the dream world. 3 types of dreams. We have the junk dreams. That's the vast majority of our dreams, and this is where we're releasing all the excess stimuli of our modern day world. How many times do you watch a TV show and then you find yourself dreaming about it that night? That's your soul processing through and releasing what it doesn't need to know, or making sense of it with whatever it's triggered in regards to past lives, your subconsciousness, etc. We also have past life dreams, and when we come out of those, first of all, Jeffrey always felt that past life dreams happen more along a black-white level. Sometimes I've heard people who dream past lives in full technicolor, but for many of us, they're a black-white dream, and that's how they've come for me when I've had them. And when we wake up, we're extremely disorientated. It feels like we're coming out of this long, long tunnel because our consciousness has went so far back in time. And then, of course, we have superconsciousness dreams. And these are many times visionary dreams or dreams of education, teaching us things that we need to know. They can be dreams that are of this solar system, or they can be superconscious dreams of beyond our solar system. For those of you who want to follow your dreams, there's a lot of information that comes through our dream world. The dreams tend to follow a 28-day lunar cycle. It's the moon-Neptune cycle. All right? Sadomasochism. I just put this here as one word in bright red colors because many of us in the world of evolutionary astrology are quite familiar with this. As we have had the rise of the patriarchy over matriarchy, it has led to the sky gods, mythology, unorganized religions, and these organized religions try to teach us or condition us that God is male, he's outside of us judging us, old man on a cloud, and God is perfect. Easy to see our imperfections as humans, and therefore we have come through thousands of years, especially the last 2000 of the Piscean age, and we have been conditioned with a lot of guilt linked to atonement. I must suffer, I must atone, is masochism, and guilt linked to anger. I'm going to get them, hurt them before they get me, is sadism. So sadomasochism stems directly from human-made religions. It did not exist back in the matriarchal times and days of natural spiritual laws and principles. Sadomasochism stems from the Virgo Pisces archetype, Mercury Neptune 6/12. You can find masochism on both polarities. You can find sadism on both polarities. In the world of EA, there's a lot written on this, so I'm just going over this quite quickly. However, it is a major, major archetype of Neptune through Pisces, and one of the ultimate things of Neptune transiting through its own sign, the last sign, is to bring these distortions of sadomasochism into consciousness so that we can resolve them and return to more natural spiritual laws and principles with universal source. And natural spiritual laws and principles are found in nature. Now, this is another area where I think I'm going to have a generic class come this winter for everybody because it is something that we can spend a whole 2 hours on. So stay tuned. I will put that notice out here as we get closer to this fall. So Neptune, again, brings about the exhaustion of all of our separating desires, and step by step, desire by desire, lifetime by lifetime, surrender to universal source until we merge back with universal source as an evolved soul or an avatar. Planetary retrogrades. These next two slides, I have a tendency to put them into every retrograde class, so we'll go through these quickly. It's a geocentric or earth-centered phenomena, and retrogrades are more powerful. Remember that visual slide, because the planet is always closer to Earth during retrograde. There's a withdrawal from the status quo. In other words, we are throwing off conditioning factors relative to that planetary archetype and returning to our own individual natural laws. So when a planet is retrograde, it is non-static. It's in a perpetual state of throwing off and becoming. Retrogrades accelerate the evolution of a planetary archetype. Sign house define the manifestation. The opposite sign and house of the retrograde provide the answers, the clarity. And of course, answers to retrogrades always come from within ourselves, because we are withdrawing or throwing off the status quo. Natal planet retrograde, these are lessons throughout a lifetime. When we have a transit, or a planet retrograde by transit, every individual is learning the lesson as well as collectively, as we had said in those Neptunian ways, racially, nationally, as a species, and then as the totality of consciousness as well. When you have a natal planet retrograde and then that planet goes retrograde by transit, it creates a temporary harmony and balance. Oh, it feels good. This is what I'm supposed to be doing, throwing this off, reviewing, trying to figure something out, trying to be me, trying to accelerate my evolution. And of course, if you are born with a natal planet stationary, retrograde, or direct, everything is intensified. That planet is standing still, and it is so strong in your consciousness. It would be worthwhile to take out one of those printed ephemerides And just look up each of your planets and see how close they are to either turning retrograde or direct. And if it's within a few days, then you have this going on for you for a lifetime. Now, Neptune retrograde in Pisces points to Virgo. And what are the most common things we get with Virgo? A reality shock. I was living in my Neptunian fantasy, goes retrograde, and oh my God, this isn't what I thought it was. And there's a purpose to that reality shock. Again, something about reality is not working, and we need to search for what does work on our manifested physical plane. And what comes along very closely with those reality shocks is what we call the Virgo crises. And we can have crises after crises after crises until we evolve. And one of the reasons why we keep having crises is because instead of changing, making the effort, asserting our will, we go into avoidance activities. I put down just a few of them. You know all the Neptunian words, all the Piscean words. You know, it has to deal a lot with addictions. TV is an addiction now. You know, reading, paperback books to an excess could be addiction. You know, there's all kinds of things. Anything can be used or abused, so anything can become that addictive vice. We also get into the excuse making. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. I can't do this. And of course, that sadomasochism just gets emphasized whenever Neptune goes retrograde, no matter what sign it's in. By the way, sadomasochism gets emphasized when Mercury's retrograde as well, ruler of Virgo. These are some of the distortions that'll come during a Neptune retrograde, trying to get our attention. So if we look at some of the Virgo lessons or more natural expressions, we have to put our feet on the ground. We have to get real and make those daily efforts in life. And Virgo rules diet, exercise, and rest. That's on a physical level. Virgo's an earth sign. The Virgo also is about forgiveness. Forgiving ourselves and forgiving those around us, because perfection doesn't exist here. We're on a path to perfect here. And so discernment and judgment are Virgo Pisces words. They belong elsewhere as well. Their archetypes share these words. But when it comes to Pisces and Virgo, Pisces is that potential for perfection. And due to all the patriarchal conditioning, we can feel self-judgment, judgment by others. We can judge others when we are looking at that ultimate perfection. And so we've got to many times replace judgment with discernment and discern who's making the effort, because the lesson is in the effort we make, not the results. Remember, separating forces in the universe are always trying to trip us up. That's why we've got to make that Virgo effort again and again and again and again until we do achieve Piscean perfection. So, being gentle with ourselves. That self-improvement effort, no matter how little the baby steps are or how giant the leaps are, it's about picking ourselves up and riding that bicycle one more time after we've skinned our knees. You can apply that to anything that you've got to just make one more time and effort with. And then when you really get to some of the most deepest expressions of Virgo, it's service to another. Libra following Virgo. Virgo, the last of the first six archetypes. So we learn how to be of service to another. We learn how to be to service to the whole, whatever that represents for us. Service to our family, service to our job, that karma yoga. the healthy work that we're here to find for ourselves, and then service to humanity, or service to Gaia, planet Earth, and all its forms of consciousness. And this leads us to be devotional in nature, to walk the talk, to be the example on planet Earth that we want to see on planet Earth. So Neptune retrograde in Pisces points to all of these things for ourselves. And whatever house you find, Neptune in Pisces, that's where the disillusionment is going to be, the voids, the confusion, and wherever the polarity is to Neptune in Pisces by house, wherever Virgo by house is, this is where you are making those efforts. And just relate each of the 12 archetypes by house to the words you know, to the archetypes in consciousness that you know. And then this is where you're making that effort to improve. This is where you're learning to serve. This is where you're learning to see source energy manifested into your world. Does this make sense? Let me stop at this moment, take a glass of water. Questions or comments? I could talk on this subject forever. I've come to really like Neptune, Pisces, and 12.
Pam, did you have a question for Kim? You have your hand raised on the board. Check it in. Okay, I'm going to let that go.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, I wanted to talk about a few planetary aspects during Neptune's retrograde. And of course, the most important one is going to be the Sun. Here we have the conjunctions of Sun to Neptune. This is kind of like that annual starting point of where we want to renew our spiritualization path on a consciousness level. And the highlight is that Neptune opposition again, August 29th, Sun at 6 Virgo, Neptune retrograde at 6 Pisces. It's that Virgo Sun shining the light of day on our reality and showing us where we need to make the effort to be in this world and where we need to create reality, and how to feel inspired, how to put one foot in the clouds and one foot on planet Earth and go, I am walking my talk. I am source manifested. Not from that egoic sense, but from that humility, Virgonian sense. Now, as I went through and did these inner planets here, I put the squares in so you could just see those and see the degrees. Because, again, Neptune travels so slowly, you can just see here that with the Sun, it's 4 to 7 degrees Pisces that's impacted through conjunctions, through squares, on how it is operating in our world. So as you get to that time period in the end of August, and this is always going to fall around Labor Day, or at this point in time, the Sun-Neptune oppositions during its retrograde fall around that Labor Day time period. So that can be a time period for a week or two when you are wanting to quiet down, when you are wanting to find yourself in nature and just really see how Source is speaking to you. Leroy and I, for those of you, many of you are becoming familiar with this, in our composite chart, we have Pluto and Capricorn going over our midheaven 5 times, 2013, 2014. We have Uranus in Aries going over our composite, ascended 3 times in 2014. I didn't not get all my details filled in on the slideshow as we move along for the rest of this. So I just have to ad lib. I don't have it written out like I usually like to. So thank you for allowing that in our world, and for Mercury retrograde. Leroy and I do both have active Mercury's in our chart, and Mercury retrograde's it's just been full of energy, hasn't it, Leroy?
I
Mercury
would say so.
Neptune. Yeah.
I would say
hmm
so, yeah.
hmm So I made I got my list started, and then I'm like, I'm out of time. Neptune. Here's Mercury's conjunction squares and oppositions to Neptune. And here again, as you can see, as Mercury, ruler of Virgo, left brain conscious mind. So it always has an important role when Neptune's retrograde in general, and especially as Neptune is retrograde in Pisces, pointing to Virgo. Neptune has a strong impact as well. So you can see with Neptune's opposition, or excuse me, Mercury's opposition with Neptune, that's August 18th of 2014, Mercury at 6.5 Virgo. So this is another time period. As we're starting to put this together here, we can see just between Sun and Mercury, we get to that second half of August, and that's going to be the other high point of where we can hear Neptune, where we can hear what source energy is trying to say to us. And as you can see what I wrote here, Virgonian, discrimination and discernment, that ability to perhaps get those messages through the board, through nebulous Neptune, and going, oh, I get it. This is how I'm supposed to operate in my world. This is my message. This is what I'm to share with others. This is how I'm to be a voice of source on a personal level, on a level with whoever I relate to. This is how I can be of service in the world. And for each of us, that's going to be in, a very different way. If we have Virgo on the 11th house and Mercury's in that 11th house, we may have some visions of the future come through of things that we are meant to do in our future. We could just as easily have traumas from the past, that sadomasochistic distortions. We could have traumas from the past that we could finally look at in an objective way. Mercury, Virgo, 11. And perhaps let that traumatic, repetitious pattern go. If Mercury's in Virgo, and the Virgo for the Sun will be there too, let's say it's in the 5th house, then there could be something to do with our creativity, something to do with children, something to do with self-love, an ability to recognize that we are a child of the universe, no matter what our age is, and that universal source loves us unconditionally, even if we have Virgo crises over a lover in our life who's disappeared or left us, or says, I don't want to do this anymore, or is just criticizing us in some way. There could be a message again. Self-love is going to belong in that Virgo Pisces archetype as well as other astrological archetypes. So probably again, the point is the timing, that second half of August. What can I hear? Can I be quiet enough to hear what source energy is saying directly to me? Venus follows just a little later. Oh, by the way, as you see these little lists, and you can see how far I got in my notes. I put X's where I need to fill in something. I'm glad I got my humor. wherever you see red, that means the aspect's taking place during the time Neptune is retrograde for its 5-month retrograde cycle. So Venus has its waxing square to Neptune at the end of June, coming up, the end of this month. You can see 7.5 Gemini Venus, 7.5 Pisces Neptune, and then Venus has an opposition to Neptune September 10th of 2014, with Venus at 6 degrees Virgo and Neptune retrograde at 6 degrees Pisces. So you can see how we're going to have Mercury August 18th, Sun August 29th, and then Venus September 10th, all in Virgo, looking to show us what we need to hear, learn, understand through Neptune's retrograde. And with Venus, this is going to come into values. So we apply that Virgo discernment, discrimination factor to what's important to us, to what we value, to deciding whom to love and how to love them. Sometimes Virgo can just be so masochistic. We can give, 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 give until we're burnt out or we have a nervous breakdown. And so this Venus-Neptune opposition is going to be there for all of us to learn some discerning factors in, again, who to love and how to love. Venus may also then give us information on that whole service and work ethic. Sometimes we might be on the opposite side of this, and we're a little on the self-centered or selfish end of the spectrum. And then this Venus-Neptune aspect is going to force us to acknowledge others, to value others, to serve others. Unique to all of us. It could also be there to show us, because Venus and Neptune, Venus lower, Neptune higher, octaves of love, it can also be there, this aspect, to help us recognize that every soul is a spark of source energy. Every soul deserves unconditional love. Now, unconditional love does not mean unhealthy boundaries. We can hold healthy boundaries and send them to the light if there is abuse on their end. We can use the Jesus parable, teaching someone to fish rather than giving them fish. That can come in with Venus Neptune. How do I be of service in helping someone while teaching them or allowing them to learn how to do it for themselves, to learn it for themselves? Venus Neptune must be very, very careful again of Florence Nightingale syndrome. If I just give a little more, love a little more, surely it'll come back. And if we're on the extreme of that, we can have some extreme disillusions and disappointments with these Venus aspects with Neptune to wake us up, to help us face the reality of recognizing that's not healthy love. Mars starts to move a little slower. I did go with the conjunctions, start from conjunction to conjunction. Mars makes 3 aspects to Neptune while it's retrograde. It makes a waxing trine in early August, Mars 7 Scorpio, Neptune Pisces. That could be some smoother energy, or at least the energy to understand the efforts, Mars, the actions that we want to take on our spiritualization journey. That waxing trine could also bring about the avoidance, the laziness, the escapism. By the time then Mars moves to that, excuse me, that was a waning trine. Sorry about that. Let me reverse that. This is the outer trine. This is the rewards of prior efforts, the first 2/3 of the zodiac. And so this is where we could receive from prior efforts Mars has made. But we could also, though, still get caught up in the laziness of what we've been able to create to this point and not recognize that evolution continues on. And if we're into the laziness, and we can still have the escapisms here or the avoidance activities here, then when Mars gets to that last quarter square, September 21st, Mars 5.5 Sag, Neptune retrograde 5.5 Pisces. That's where the crises in consciousness will come in, and that's where the actions no longer work. Everything we achieved at the trine is in some way crumbling or not working or not making sense or leaving us in some depression or void again, because there has to be a greater purpose. There has to be a surrender of the desire after it has been achieved. And that Mars last quarter square Neptune is going to be a time period where we need to make the effort to commune with Source, to I will, my will, divine will, to align personal will with divine will. Source, what would you have me know and do now? If I need to be of service to you and still carry forward a little bit further in the last 90 degrees of the circle, sure. If it's time to let it go, I'll make that effort. And if we do, then when Mars gets to the waning sextile with Neptune, November 1st, 5 degrees Capricorn Mars, Neptune still retrograde, slowing down though, 5 degrees Pisces, then this is where re-inspiration comes, more rewards come. This is where we get the insights of the next Mars-Neptune cycle will initiate when Mars conjuncts Neptune at our next January 19th, 2015, 7 degrees. So you can take each of these cycles and just follow them in your own chart to see where Neptune, where Venus and Neptune are values, Mars and Neptune is desires and actions. And then if you want, place them into their houses in your chart. And that's where you fill in the clues, fill in the details. Jupiter. You see the Jupiter-Neptune opposition's in green. I just put that in there because Jupiter-Neptune is an important planetary pair. It is the evolution of conscious Jupiter and unconscious Neptune beliefs. You see we had those conjunctions of Jupiter to Neptune back in 2009 in late Aquarius. We had Jupiter, Chiron, and Neptune hanging out in late Aquarius together, and I so remember that. Quantum physics was the buzzword in that time period. Jupiter is soon approaching an opposition to Neptune. Going to go through a year of Leo, but then it will be in Neptune, as you can see, September, or Virgo, and opposing Neptune. September 2015, there's only one opposition. That might be a little nice. Neptune's making this long transit through Pisces. We can get it. And then you see when we have the next Jupiter cycle coming up. Saturn. Saturn has a bunch of aspects with Neptune, and I put them all in here. As you can see, also in green, Saturn is approaching a last quarter square to Neptune. It's going to be a little bit here before it does that. Its conjunctions, its last conjunction, this is a 30-year cycle. The divine discontent was Jeffrey's key words for Saturn-Neptune as a planetary pair, where we have to accept the limitations of our reality. Because Neptune is beyond space-time, because Neptune is totality of consciousness. We all have that imaginary ability to envision, to desire, but it condenses down into form with Saturn, and there's where we have to face the limitations. You know, the example is we don't all get to be presidents of the United States. You know, just a few of us. We've only had 44 of them so far in our history. And so we all have to work through the condensation of consciousness with Neptune down into form via Saturn. And as you can see, Saturn had those oppositions to Neptune back in 2007. Saturn was in Leo, Neptune was in Aquarius. So this is where Saturn reached its apex with Neptune in Leo, of course. I can do this. And ever since then, we have been having to surrender Saturn to Neptune and go, well, this is what I have created with my belief structures on the deepest levels. And so now, how do I really be forced to align my will with divine will? Now, as Saturn moves into these last quarter squares with Neptune, we'll be talking about this for a few Neptune retrograde cycles here, a couple more years, because this happens late 2015, 2016, three last quarter squares. You know, this is where all of us will have some type of crises in consciousness over reality's not working out. Saturn's going to be in Sag. That's going to be very helpful in my eyes, because it's going to allow us to be searching for the deeper reasons why, the deeper understandings of what this all means, and hopefully mutable archetype Sag, surrendering to Neptune and whatever source energy would have us know. We look at this on a collective level, and I think that this aspect is going to really have everybody's consciousness, even in the consensus world, everybody's consciousness recognizing climate change and a crisis mode, crises in beliefs. What are we going to do? Doesn't work the way we thought it did. We can't have all this fossil fuel usage like we have, you know. Mama Earth is going wild. Pisces, look at nature. And if you're paying attention to the news, it was pretty exciting in the Omaha area yesterday, and my brother-in-law is working there for a week undergoing some training. He was safe, he was sound. Astral clients and colleagues there. I think everybody was okay, but it was a little exciting up here in the northern plains. And of course, many of us on these calls are very much in touch with recognizing the interrelatedness of all forms of consciousness on planet Earth. We are not separate from climate change. We are not separate from Gaia. And that's one of Neptune's long, major messages through its long Pisces passage. And so that Virgo polarity is waking up to the reality shock of what we're doing to planet Earth. Probably one of the biggest lessons on a collective level to these Neptune retrograde cycles. Now I think I got through the planets. I didn't put the outer planets in. This is where I really didn't get to my notes, even though I had it outlined. So let me stop at this point and take questions or comments from anybody, and I'll try and go through these 12 houses just as fast as possible. Ooh, I got 40 minutes. So let me take a drink and stop for a moment, though, and comments or questions in general on Neptune, Neptune and Pisces, the retrograde, the Virgo polarity point.
Kim, I'm going to have Robin ask a question about how to apply this Virgo polarity. Robin, are you available? Well, the question in essence, Kim, is, we're talking about look to the opposite house that Neptune is transiting, and
Mhm.
through that revelation, apply the Virgo understandings to that house.
Yes,
Okay. Or do we apply the Virgo understandings to the house Neptune is transiting?
you can apply it to both.
That's what I said. It's kind of a continuum. The thread remains. You have to incorporate the polarity in as you work through the archetypes. It,
The polarity of a planetary retrograde always brings objectivity, opposition aspect. It always brings objectivity that then is applied to that house objectively and then goes back to the original house of the planet that's retrograde. Did
very
I
good.
hear Robin? I hear noise.
No, she must have
Mhm. All right.
left the board
Uh,
for now.
other questions, comments in general?
So, if there was a chart that had this Neptune retrograde basically opposing Jupiter, this belief, this concept of our ultimate beliefs and our personal beliefs, how would you interpret that?
Okay, what was the first part of the question again? If there's a planet?
Transiting Neptune in Pisces, 7 degrees, opposing Jupiter in 7-degree Virgo.
Um, it was somewhat of what we were looking at here, as we were talking about this in general, all right? If it's natal Jupiter, that's going to describe your soul's conscious belief structure by sign and house. And Jupiter in Virgo is, especially with this sadomasochistic patriarchal conditioning, Jupiter in Virgo has really got an identity complex with itself, a self-worth complex, a worthiness complex. Many times Jupiter and Virgo people will have resource issues. Virgo's an earth sign, and so they'll have money issues. They can be the type of person who could work really hard and make a bunch of money, but if they don't believe they're worthy of it, they find a way to give it away or lose it. And so as Neptune's going through Pisces, now with Jupiter opposite Neptune, this is coming up generically for all of us in September of 2015, okay? But if with Neptune in Pisces opposing that natal Jupiter in Virgo, it's really there to dissolve all of that self-doubt and unworthiness. But it'll do it in such a way that it just seems like everything's a crisis and everything in their world is being taken away, and I don't know what to believe anymore, so that they have to surrender and go within and have that one-on-one direct communication with source energy. The polarity is going to say, my ultimate relationship is God Goddess, and I've got to have that before Jupiter and Virgo manifests anything in the world. And when they make that reconnection with source energy, and chances are transiting Neptune and Pisces is going to have 3 or 5 oppositions to that Jupiter and Virgo, as they do that, then there's re-inspiration. Then they really do find their karma yoga, the work to do on planet Earth. And Jupiter becomes so re-inspired. Jupiter's beliefs expand from the cup half empty to the cup half full. Instead of seeing all the lack in the universe, they see, they just see prosperity and growth and bloom and Jupiter's expansions all over the place. Now, when it's Neptune opposing that natal Jupiter, that doesn't happen in 2 weeks. depending on whether there's 3 or 5 oppositions, that is most likely a 2 to 5 year journey. As you're looking at the screen in front of you, because that's going to happen collectively for all of us in September of 2015. They're both transiting planets. That passage will probably be more like 6 to 8 months here during Neptune's opposition. It'll depend upon how many times Neptune crosses over that 8-degree Pisces mark as to how long that extends. And it's possible it could extend to a year and a half collectively with this transit.
Thank you.
Again, Neptune takes it away and then gives it back. Neptune takes it away and gives it back. However, rarely, if ever, does it do it according to the expectations of your ego. And that's where you're going to sit in the void until you surrender to how Neptune wants to give it back to you. Other questions or comments in general? That was one planetary example. I'll never get through the 12 houses if I get caught up in those examples. You're just going to have to relate it to these 12 houses, okay? Instead of a house, if you have Neptune squaring Mars, or you have Neptune trining or opposing Mars, take that aspect into consideration, but you'll work with these things. And I'll come through afterwards and jot down the notes, okay? But Leroy, if I could, and I know you're running the board, or if somebody out there would, I'll talk it, but I'm not going to remember what I talk. So somebody will type words as we go through those 12 houses and send me an email. I would love that. And I'll take the time to put it in the 12 houses afterwards. But before I move through this now, as I'm going to do it in 35 minutes, any more questions generically? Neptune in Pisces, retrograde, Virgo polarity.
You're good on the board, Kim.
Okay. Vast, complicated subject. I could talk on it for days. So as you can see here, as we are looking at this, when we have Neptune in Pisces, retrograde in the first house, some of the things we'll deal with is there's God complexes. There's such a strong self-identity issue with Mars, that instinctive desire to become, that we get identity confusion, and the God complex range from feeling so small and significant, everybody else, 7th house polarity is the God, or we are, and everybody else, 7th house polarity, needs to serve us. The Virgo polarity point reality check, hey, guess what? We're equals. And guess what? We are not God. We are an expression of source energy. We're going to be very idealistic. That wherever Neptune in Pisces is transiting by house, you're going to be idealizing those house issues. And the Virgo polarity point is the reality check. And so if you, with Neptune in that first house, there's going to be a lot of reality checks via other people, via your relationships in your life, not just intimate partners, but via all kinds of people, giving you all kinds of information that feeds back to self. And we have to really become inspired about ourselves. Now, I would like to say at this point right here, as I bullet point these houses, if you are interested in this information, we did a 13-week, 26-hour workshop on Neptune in Pisces. And Leroy's going to help me. I think it is in section 1 of the Astro Library, and I think it's in section 3
because
of the
it's
Astro Library.
It's relevant current long-term transit, and it's also very archetypal as we went through that 26-hour event. So yeah, a lot of information in the Astro Library.
Yeah, we did this back in 2011. It was the first of my outer planet workshops, and there's 26 hours of Neptune through all 12 houses. Section 3 is only $19 for a month. I would recommend you buy this, and you can have me going 2 hours through each house. And so again, this is a really bullet point, but you can get a lot more detailed information on this, and then you can apply this in more detail to the Neptune retrograde relevant to yourself. Second house, there's idealism around all our resources, and so what comes up? Resource crises. And that eighth house polarity is where we've got to get real. We could hoard resources. We could have no resources, give them away. And so that eighth house, we have somehow there's a reality check of merging resources or co-creating resources. One of the ultimate meanings of Taurus Venus second house is that the ultimate resource is God Goddess itself. So Neptune through that second house, we're going to have that physical world from time to time just take the resources away so that we really recognize where it comes from. And Kim Marie has Neptune in Pisces intercepted in her second house. So I know this lesson. I know that Virgo crises of, oh my God, how am I going to get all the bills paid this month? And then that need to just breathe, go down, go within Source and say, Source, you've always supplied. I haven't starved yet. You always bring it in unimaginable ways that I don't even recognize. So, show me what it is. Show me how I serve you. Show me how I do spiritual work. I have 2 businesses and they're both completely spiritual work. And so I then have to calm myself down. And then whenever I feel that disillusionment around resources, I just have to recognize you are the ultimate resource, God Goddess. And you're the only thing I'm going to have when I leave this physical world anyway. So there can be a loss of personal meaning with our resources, with our life. And Neptune retrograde again throws us over to the 8th house. How do we co-create? How do we merge with others? How do we receive from the universe? So this will go from lack of resources to hoarding. The universe will give us unexpectedly resources from ways we never thought, and it'll take it away if we're hoarding. Third house, Neptune in Pisces. This is going to bring up communication issues. This is going to bring up our day-to-day details in life. This is, this is where we get to be so busybody, and there's a very, very strong need to quiet the mind. Neptune in Pisces, this is where we can get into, some of the religions in the world. And there's like 3,500 religions in the world. Who's right, who's wrong? And we can get very defensive and very argumentative. And that polarity point 9th house is teaching us natural law. The disillusion with religion to get us towards spirituality. And the disillusionment of trying to be in control of our world. We can do that 3rd house, running around with our head cut off because we are just trying to put all those details together in order to keep reality in check. And Neptune and Pisces are going, there's not enough details in the universe for you to have control. I am just going to collapse your world. You could, in its extremes, you could have the mental breakdowns, the nervous breakdowns. That's what we need to quiet ourselves down. So when you have this transit, You need that polarity nature. You need to find ways to pace yourself. You need to find ways to quiet the mind. And you need to learn how to listen as much as you want to speak. I ran across a cliche, and I'm going to paraphrase it lately. Most of us listen not to understand, but in order to speak next. So this Neptune transit, it's going to be the inner conversations, the inner communications, and recognizing, feel that polarity point that the metaphysical world is so much deeper and stronger than this physical world that we're trying to classify and label. So there's a very strong need to go from left brain to right brain. And as those right brain polarity answers come through, yes, in Virgo, Virgo can bring it through in such a clear way when Neptune third Pisces takes the time to quiet and listen. And then we can have the communications, the speaking, the writing. Then all that can come back in ever more inspired ways through that Neptune Pisces. Fourth house. When you put Neptune in Pisces through the fourth house, it's a double water signature. So all the emotional security issues come into play. And if we are not emotionally self-reliant, then we can just become extremely needy on emotional levels. And that polarity point is asking all of us to go through a maturation process emotionally. Virgo's up there on the 10th house. It's a double earth signature. And the objectivity polarity is get real. We're all feeling sensitized with Neptune in Pisces. We all feel emotionally triggered. And so we all need to take the necessary steps of being responsible for our own emotional wounds and distortions. We will revisit the familial issues and the early environment. And the polarity objectivity is to be able to discern. Our parents are just as wounded. They were doing the best they could do, and they're imperfect. So now as you are evolving through your adulthood, whatever generation you're in, can you forgive your parents? Can you forgive yourself? Can you move yourself to deeper levels of unconditional love for yourself and others? And as you move through those types of crises, then you're going to reach deeper levels of unconditional love. You've got the ability to reach the ultimate inner security, because you're recognizing the thing to recognize is the ultimate parent, source energy, and they do unconditionally love you. And so then that allows you, polarity point, to see the world in a much more mature way, to see that consciousness is in many forms, 10th house, and everybody is in different states of awareness, so therefore different states of form. And even though it can appear to be extremely cruel out there in the world, and sometimes, it is the contrast point for learning. And so you, for example, the issues they're having over in India with the abuse of women and the gang rapes and the distortions that are going on. It is recognizing that the victor, the perpetrator, is just as wounded as the victim. And that Ho'oponopono, Hawaiian forgiveness prayer for the abuser, is just as important as envisioning the women healthy, whole, and healed again on the spirit side. In other words, we need to work for the healing of both sides of the coin, and that sadomasochistic energy. And that's how we bring that into wholeness. So, again, honoring those emotions. When you get the emotional withdrawal, what does it mean? And then working to heal it to deeper levels of self-love, turning to source for all the love, and then being able to be a vision for that, a message for that out there in the world. When Neptune is in Pisces in the 5th house, we can go into some creativity complexes. We can feel like we have no creativity, or we can feel that we are the most creative thing on the universe and nobody can do it as good as us. Either one of those extremes are going to have the polarity opposites. When we have crises over, I'm not creative enough, Virgo 11th house is the real objectivity to recognize all souls are creative. And when we look to source as inspiration for the creativity versus our ego, then the visions and the messages and the ideas of how to create in the universe are never ending. They just come through left and right all over the place, and we can't even begin to manifest as much as we can envision. So Virgo discerns what's priority, what's most important, or what's of service. I gotta take a break. Actually, I need a drink. Thank you. What's of most service to someone else out there? And if we're running around just a little too egotistical or self-centered or self-focused in regards to that whole creativity thing, then the Virgo 11th house polarity is nothing happens. No one notices. We are totally ignored by the world. And then that sinks us into a disillusionment, because when there's no recognition, there's where we have to, we say this a lot with the Leo archetype, I will, my will, divine will. Then we have to take that Virgo 11th house polarity and, again, what does society need? Not what I want to project onto them. And we will remain unrecognized on the sideline until we do make that type of shift and recognize that everybody else is just as creative as we are. One of the ultimate things of the 5th house archetype is that we are an expression of the creative principle. We are not source energy. We are a channel for source energy to come through. And so Neptune retrograde in Pisces is about finding that balance, either learning to express our creativity or recognizing others. So that, again, Virgo polarity, there's equality of everybody being a creative expression for source on planet Earth. Another thing is that we can, with the fixed archetypes, the fixed houses, sometimes we can have power issues. And, Neptune in Pisces in the 5th house, if it's distorted, it, again, wants to direct the play. It thinks it can be all powerful. It thinks it can be in charge. And it will have power taken away to enforce the objectivity. and recognition, Virgo, that others have a right to power too, an equal sharing of power. The other extreme, powerlessness, then Neptune will in some way bring about that objectivity of empowering ourselves and allowing us to recognize it's okay to stand in our power without feeling all of the guilt around it. Seventh house. When we have, whoops, did I skip the sixth house? Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, sixth house. there's the Virgo archetype. I'm not worthy of. I'm not even going to be noticed.
that makes everybody feel even more unworthy.
Oh well, it's a lot. It's just more of everything we've been talking about, except it's flipped over. And so there's a little double emphasis of objectivity here on all the sadomasochistic tendencies. Neptune in Pisces in the sixth house, it creates complexes and disillusionment around the whole self-perfection issue. We can be idealistic and think that everybody is on that path of self-improvement as much as we are. And we can have the disillusionment over over all of the distortions in the world. I mean, we can really fall into that sixth house letdown of all of the pain and suffering. It's like what I said with the fourth house example. We've really got to open up Neptune deeper and broader understandings of what suffering in this world is about, of what the Virgo crises are all about, of what life experiences by contrast, as we say, is all about. It's to teach us discernment. It's to teach us what we want and do not want to co-create in the world. This Neptune house transit is going to be so sensitized to all of the sadomasochism on planet Earth. They're going to be the people who can't turn on the television and watch the suffering in the world. And so, again, you're going to want to reach for that deeper understanding and recognize that sometimes it's lessons to evolve. If you're on this, if you're listening to this class, you've been through all of your own persecutions. You've been persecuted. You've been the persecutor, and we'll go on both sides of that fence to learn the wholeness of it. To learn that these experiences again are the path to God. They are the path to expression. If source energy was perfect, why would it create this mess? So therefore, every baby step forward I can make, source itself evolves. So the Virgo polarity on the 12th house is recognizing the imperfection of source energy itself and recognizing how important it is to make that effort again, again. Because so much of the sixth house can relate to health and wellness, there can be health issues here. And those health issues will resolve themselves to the degree that we can feel a reconnection to source energy. And Virgo on that 12th house is got to be able to say, listen, source energy is real, and it is within me, it is within all of us, it's all around, and I am so, so worthy of it. And it doesn't matter who I was or what I did in my past. in my here and now, and my desire to self-improve, I am worthy. Self-forgiveness, forgiveness of others. And then that will really help us move into being more loving and devotional with self rather than beating self up. And we could do very similar to the Neptune in the third house transit, which is the nervous system breakdowns, to get us to stop running around with our head cut off, to get Virgo to relax into that 12th house and feel source energy, recognize source energy, see source. And then we move into, again, karma yoga, being of service to ourselves and others in healthy ways versus all of, the I've got to overdo it. Florence Nightingale, the Florence Nightingale, whoever, you know what I'm trying to say, versus going into all that atonement stuff of, I've just got to give until I'm depleted and nothing to give back. When Neptune moves through the 6th house, regardless of the sign, if we really make that connection to source energy, then we are a channel for source to heal through. We do become the healer, the shaman. But it's not us healing. It's us again, channeling source energy. And, there are those situations where you can move it out of somebody else's physical body. But you've got to be very, very careful and evolved and aware that you're just not transferring it to yourself. But you really are moving it through and source and giving it to the light and giving it to source energy. Now, in this 6th house, if we look at the sadistic side or the victor side, or, get them before they get me, we can be a cruel SOB. And if that's the case, that Virgo, 12th house, we're going to get locked up some way. We're going to get imprisoned some way in order to objectify and recognize our actions and that they are not helpful nor are they healthy. And that imprisonment can be literal or figurative. The existential void can be there with Neptune in the 6th, and where nothing makes sense, nothing has meaning. And we must make the effort, Virgo, again and again, Virgo, to reach for source energy. And what would you have me know? What would you have me understand to make sense of my world, to make sense of my life, to make sense of my day-to-day routine? All right, now I can move on to the 7th house. And Virgo, 6th house, please feel worthy. When we put Neptune in the 7th house, transiting with Pisces, we're going to have all of the relationship issues come up. We're going to have confusion around relationships. We're going to have all our projections and idealism out there on the partner, and then we're going to have the disillusionment when they aren't who we projected onto them. We must have discrimination here. And we've got to go to the 1st house polarity point with Virgo and go, wait a minute, if I don't take care of me, it don't matter who I'm in relationship with. The partner will leave or the partner be removed from me if I'm getting too enmeshed with them. So there has to be a discernment to balance time with ourselves and taking care of ourselves, Virgo, diet, exercise, and rest, physical body, 1st house, and then balance that with searching for an equal giving and receiving in relationships. What you can find when Neptune in Pisces is transiting through the 7th house, is you're going to find the passive aggressive distortions, all that type of game playing, and that confuses the partner. And Virgo first house polarity point, they might get pissed off and call you out on it and say, get real in relationships. Don't play this game with me. Don't do a side number on me. Speak up. And so they can call you on some of your Neptunian BS and sideways stuff. Neptune Pisces 7th house. There's a necessity to listen. 7th house Libra side of Venus is the psychology of listening. We have to listen to source energy here. And source will speak through others, but it'll also speak inwardly, especially when it goes retrograde and turns us inward. What does source have to say to us here? And chances are the messages are going to be, again, about ourselves, Virgo first house, versus the relationship. And so this Neptune retrograde means we got to get our own stuff together in order to evolve these relationships we're in. And I've got to look for my ultimate savior within myself, because that's where I'm going to find source energy, rather than looking for that partner that I'm always wanting to save me. We also are going to have to look at the equality issues in the relationship. Because again, Neptune here, there can be, some extremes in the giving and the receiving. And if we're the giver, we're on the control side of the issue. We're giving in order to subtly control. Then we sometimes are going to have to back off and not give and give to ourselves, or allow that partner to have their freedom to be who they want to be rather than who we want them to be. And if the inequality is where, we're always being controlled and everybody does everything for us, we have to step up to the plate for ourselves as well. We have to step up and do our share in the relationship. In other words, whatever extreme is happening with Neptune and Pisces between giving and receiving, or giving and taking, we have to go to the polarity opposite. And so we're going to be throwing in on ourselves, first house, one way or another, to discern, to discriminate, to get real, Virgo, on how we need to change our relationships. When we have Neptune in Pisces, in the moving into the 8th house, this is where it starts to involve all of the issues of the soul and its desire nature. And it can be one of the houses where, just like the 7th, in the 8th, where we can substitute the partner for source energy. And whereas in the 7th house we do it passive aggressively, or we do it through enmeshment, in the 8th house it can turn into that OCD complex. It can turn into the possessiveness, the control issues, the jealousy issues, and Neptune can be very subtle and manipulating about it here. And all that is revealing is the degree of codependency and insecurity we actually have. And that Virgo polarity in the 2nd house is, we're going to, depending on the degree of all of the Scorpio distortions, it's going to be the degree into which we are really throwing in upon ourselves in order to hopefully affect some Virgo discernment and analyzation of why we act the way we act, and to help us move towards, some deeper levels of self-reliance, so that we can learn how to, commit to partners on deep levels without guarantees. This Neptune Pisces transit, it can take in all of Pluto, the soul, Scorpio, 8th house, complexes and distortions. It can go the extremes from the worst of the worst to, the best of the best. And so there needs to just be that observation correlation of where it's really happening for you. There's going to be, deep unconscious fears of abandonment and betrayal here. So again, it can lead to the possessiveness, or it can lead to, isolation. I'm not going to have anything to do with anybody. We can go over to that polarity point, second house Virgo, and go, hey, double Earth signature, I don't need anybody. I can take care of myself. I got it all together. Look at me doing it all alone. And then Neptune in Pisces is going to send in the lover with such hypnotic attraction that we will be pulled into a relationship in order to face all of the fears underneath that wall of isolation, or I don't need anybody. What we're striving for here is, again, Neptune and Pisces evolving their ultimate relationship with source energy, so that we become self-reliant enough, so that we work into healthy discernment, just like 7th house, healthy discernment on who is a good choice and who's not a good choice. And if we really are working on that interconnection with source energy, no substitutes, then we're going to evolve our self-reliance, and we're going to evolve that ability to commit to a soulmate over a karma mate. And we are both then going to evolve spiritually through the relationship commitment. We can really take a committed soulmate relationship to another level and see source through that person, and yet both remain self-reliant in working on our own spiritual path. So again, best of the best, worst of the worst. Also, the other thing here, one more thing here with 8th house, because it relates to the dual desire nature. When Neptune's in Pisces, there's going to be an emphasis here on exhausting and separating desires, no longer serving our soul, and we're going to want to cling 8th house to those desires. And that second house polarity, Virgo, is going to be about simplifying our life and simplifying the desire nature, and really being able to let go and be okay with those inner resources. Source energy, again, remember, ultimate resource, second house. And then that's going to really evolve that dual desire nature when it's in the 8th, and it can really, literally expand the returning desire to know source energy. Then we self-empower, and then we work to be empowering of others as we release the attachment to the exhaustion of desires no longer serving us. Now, if we have Neptune in Pisces moving through the Ninth house, it's going to be a lot of what we spoke about earlier when we looked at the example of Jupiter opposing Neptune in Pisces. All right, there it's going to be the expansion of our conscious beliefs, and we're going to have to take all those deep, deep cosmological understandings, and we're going to have to make them conscious. We're going to have to walk our talk. We're going to have to actually practice them. One of the distortions that can come from the ninth house is compensation. Well, I say this about my spiritual life, but do I walk the talk? So we've got to get honest with ourselves. The honesty issue is going to come with Neptune in the third and Neptune in the ninth. We have to get honest with ourselves. And that Virgo third house polarity, others are going to confront us. They're going to expose our compensations or any dishonesties. They are going to trigger us on our path that we don't know the whole truth. They're going to expose the weak links that then have us in a void or in a crisis over what to believe, that then has us going inward to search for deeper understandings. Alienation comes here with the ninth house and Neptune in Pisces. If we're not walking our talk and practicing what we preach, we could find ourselves alienated by others. And if we're looking for substitutes for God, we could find ourselves alienated to turn us inward to really find ultimate source on deep, deep levels. Because we'll get invested in our truth is the whole truth. And Sag is like ripple, putting a pebble in a pond and the ripples keep expanding. We've got to be willing to recognize that our truth is a part of the truth and we're on the path to universal truth, and there's always a deeper, broader understanding. And so again, being open and welcoming to the third house polarity exposures and Virgo crises and what to believe to lead us to those deeper understandings, to lead us to walking the talk, practicing what we preach. And sometimes Neptune in Pisces through that ninth house, language comes into the picture. Whereas the third house was full of words and excuses, trying to make sense of it all, and the ninth house is the opposite. We sense it, but we don't know how to talk it. We don't know how to put it in words. And so there needs to be a deepening of the relationship with source energy and say, I know this on so many levels. Please help me bring it down into human consciousness language so that I may third house share what I know. And when they want to become a channel for source in that way, they become visionaries. They can speak and write in such a way that it is attracting into many others third house and helps take them to deeper and deeper understandings. That visionary and dream and that visionary and dream process of Sag in the ninth house, and then overlay Neptune and Pisces on top of it, we have to be careful of self-fulfilling prophecies and If we get caught up in that, then we're going to have the disillusionment, and we're going to have third house, somebody else does it, not us. And if we really get into some of those deeper visions, we have to find a humbleness in being the channel. We have to watch trying to be the Nostradamus effect. We could cry wolf to the extent that when it's real, nobody believes us anymore. So we've got to walk a sensitive line in, all right, Source, I recognize that you are using me as a messenger. You are channeling through me. It's not enough to just give me the information. How would you have me share it? And sometimes Source will say, you're not to share it. And so you've got to use that Virgo third house discernment in listening to Source say, share this, don't share that. Especially if you work as a healer or shaman or astrologer or whatever. Recognize that the ultimate gift of prophecy into the future is to change it if you don't like what you see. 10th house. When we have Neptune in Pisces going through the 10th house, we can have all of those disillusions come through in regards to the reality that we have built up to this point. It's the third of the Earth archetypes, and we've accumulated resources, we've accumulated the positions in society, we've accumulated position with our family, and it all crumbles apart because we are not our stuff. We are not our position. We are not the one who controls the household. And that outer world will dissolve, will crumble, and we will be left in a physical void until we go over to that fourth house polarity point and access the emotional body and access inner security. And we'll have Virgo over there on that fourth house cusp, and we can get all caught up in emotional crises and, you know, despair, disillusionment, depression. You know, we can go back to, you know, we can trigger all of the familial early environment emotions, and it just can trigger us back to our inner wounded child. And Virgo's got to be discerning enough to go, nobody's going to love you better than yourself. And you need to take care of your inner world before your outer world will reinvent itself. So Neptune in Pisces transiting through that 10th house. I mean, how do I take what I know, what I can do, and again, serve the greater whole? How do I serve myself on a deep inner emotional level? And then how do I transfer all that I accumulate and know into, you know, helping others, into helping others create for themselves? How do I recognize that nothing in this world lasts forever? Can I find peace in the process of create, destroy? One of the things that'll come up with the 10th house is what we call guilt. And there's natural guilt when we have abused resources. signature, then how do I make peace with the space-time medium of I may be receiving visions that are ahead of their time, and I may go through the disillusionment because I can't fifth house polarity manifest them. So can I make peace with holding it in my consciousness that it will come to pass, whether I'm chosen to be the one to bring it out or somebody else is? Can I make peace with just knowing that Source trusts me to have this wisdom and information, even if it is not ready for the world yet? How do I safeguard it for when the world is ready? It can be lonely in the 11th house because this is where we have to be a group of one. Here again, Neptune and Pisces, doesn't matter what house it is, you got to turn to source energy. And how do we turn loneliness into being a group of one? How do we recognize that we are never alone? Source is always, always with us. And if we are going through the alienation from everyone else and feeling as though we are a group of one, how do we find that connection with Source that then allows us to go through that individualization process and be who we really are? And if we do that, then we can take some of these creative ideas that Source brings through, and we can then work to manifest them, fifth house Virgo, because we have the courage to be an individual. We have the courage to strike out on our own. We have the courage to go out there into the world and be. If we have Neptune, if we have Pisces on the 11th house, in the 11th house, it means that we're going to have had spiritual traumas from past lives. And Neptune in Pisces, we could be in danger of re-imprinting those traumas. And if we re-experience that, it's there to make it conscious, to heal it, Virgo, polarity, fifth house, and go, wait a minute, I am to empower fifth house. I am more than my traumas. I am more than a spiritual victim. And we need to be using all of the resources that are available in the alternative metaphysical world to make these traumas conscious, no matter what, physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, no matter what they are, to make them conscious, to heal them so that we can become the spiritual visionary that we have the potential to be with Neptune in Pisces. And we also have to recognize our disillusionment over thinking that everything's equal. You know, Aquarius in the 11th house wants everything to be equal, fair, good for everybody, no matter the race, no matter the country, no matter the ethnicism. And so we have to make peace with, again, everybody's at different evolutionary states, everybody's on different journeys, everybody's in the right place at the right time for what they need to learn. And it's okay for me to go over to the fifth house polarity and be all I can be, and then be an example for others. Neptune in Pisces in the 12th house, the triple signature. In a nutshell, it is everything we have spoken about for the last 2 hours and 20 minutes. It is going to emphasize everything we talked about in regards to the cycles of confusion, to let go, to enter the void, to find the next connection with Source, to then have the next clarity. When we merge with God, Goddess, it is literally the scariest thing we do. Because letting go and letting God, Goddess, not from the victimizing religious sense, but from a very healthy co-creating sense, natural law sense, letting go and letting God Goddess feels like we are losing ourselves until we are on the other side of the merging. And this is why we cling to those illusions, disillusions, dreams, ideals, fantasies, separating desires. This is why we cling, 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 cling. And this is why we have the void, 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 void. Because Source has the ultimate power. And no matter how strong we think we are on that way, we are all in process of returning to the sea. So there is this necessity to find our will, to just commit to Virgo polarity in the 6th house, and to go through the effort day by step by step, moment by moment, hour by hour, day by day, lifetime by lifetime, to really try to be in the world while we are trying to hear source energy, while we are trying to let go and re-merge with source. When we can embrace the Virgonian process, then we will have that reconnection with source. Then we'll feel that divine presence of source within us. Then we'll walk our talk on those ultimate levels. So again, it's recognizing that letting go and letting God Goddess, merging with source, is the scariest thing any of us will ever do. But if we're willing to make the Virgo effort, all right, I don't know why this is disappearing out of my life. I don't know why this is happening to me, but obviously it's real. So I'm going to make the effort to just do the best I can do in my physical body while I'm trying to understand it on the deepest spiritual levels possible. And source energy, make it quick, please. Let me find my reconnection to you, to then find my reconnection to myself and my reconnection to walking my path in this world. All right, everybody, that's it. Thank you all for sticking around. Again, one more time, the Astral Library. It is section 3. Oh, I'm sorry, I said 19, 29. It is section 3 where we have the 26 hours of going through Neptune and Pisces through the 12 houses if you want this nutshell in more detail. And last, we do have one more retrograde coming up next week. We will have Chiron retrograde in Pisces. This will be similar to this, but here's where we're really going to focus on the woundedness and on the distortions of sadomasochism at the ending of this Piscean age, and how Chiron is really going to help us with the healing. Chiron is working very synergistically with Neptune for a few more years as it finishes up its transit through Pisces. I thank you so much for those of you who hung in there an extra half hour. Let me check in. Are there any burning questions or comments that I need to address, Leroy?
No.
All right. Well, thank you all again very, very much for hanging in there with me. And I'll see you again on our next class. Remember, you can ask for a sample class download from either segment 1 or segment 2. And for another few days through the end of this weekend, I think, we have the all 3 segments, $50 off, free shipping. All right, thank you everyone very, very much, and I wish you all the success in the world on your path back to God Goddess. Adios.
That coupon code for the $50 off again is segment, SEGMENT. And again, thank you for staying with us, everyone. See you next time.